Hello, everyone. It's Elena back for this week's episode of the Financial Planner Life podcast. And this week, I'm joined by Matt Hitcher, Managing Partner, Altor Wealth Management. I'm really excited to be sat with a B Corp financial planning firm as part of B Corp month. We talk all about the process, why he decided to become a B Corp firm, and what it's like going through that recertification process 3 years later. But this episode isn't solely about B Corp. We talk about how Matt created 3 really strong pillars when he founded Outlaw Wealth Management, and we discuss how he's carried these pillars with him moving forward. We also discuss how Matt's relationship with technology within the financial planning profession, and listen to this episode if you want to hear what Matt did to make his relationship better. So it's the first question that I like to ask everyone, Matt, when they come on the Financial Planner Life podcast. But can you tell me a little bit about your career journey to date and how you've got at the point that you're at now?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I joined initially I joined a bank, of all things, back in 2000. But very quickly after that, progressed to a firm called Tower Law, which doesn't exist actually anymore, but was a national IFA back then. Started off as a telephone-based advisor, then went out seeing clients face to face. And actually stayed there for 15 years. Wasn't necessarily the intention that I'd join them and have a career quite that long, but it's one of those things you get stuck in with a firm, and 15 years later you find you've had a long period of time with them. So worked all the way up to executive partner. So we had about 200 advisors. There were 4 executive partners nationally. So I was the one in the south, and we ultimately got bought out in 2016 by a very big private equity firm, and that was the nudge to leave and set up my own thing.
Yeah. And obviously going from having a really long career, very corporate career, into doing something, yourself, you said that you very much had like a clean sheet. So I guess what were the foundations then of the business that you decided to build?
Yeah, so the nice thing, I mean, the Tower Law was a great firm to work for, and it was a huge learning experience for 15 years. So it picked up an enormous amount of knowledge about the clients, about how to deliver financial planning. But starting afresh, you get the opportunity to either go and join another corporate and do the same thing again, or to start your own thing. And I decided, along with my wife, that we would set up a new firm, which is Altor, that we're running at the moment. And so the nice thing about starting out is there's nothing that you have to do outside of regulation. Obviously, you've got to stay within the boundaries that the FCA expects. But actually, beyond that, you can start with a completely clean sheet of paper. We did exactly that. We sat down and said, okay, how do we think we would want to be advised and charged and dealt with as clients? So from a client perspective, what do we think is the right way of running the business? And then also, how would we ideally like to run the business from the business perspective as well as the clients? So that's great as an academic exercise to do with your crayons and your pad of blank paper. Obviously, implementing that is harder, but we decided from the outset that we wouldn't take any percentage charging at all. So we would only operate on a flat fee basis. So we have a monthly subscription, that's the same monthly subscription for everyone, essentially. And we make that very clear on our website. So we're like a Netflix subscription, and all the other subscriptions we're all paying for now. Everyone's paying monthly for everything. You can get your razors delivered for a monthly subscription now. So we decided that was important from a client point of view, because we just felt that was fairer, that everyone paid the same amount and got the same service rather than any cross subsidies. So that was an important thing for us. We also decided, which was very easy to do when we didn't have any income coming into the firm, we decided that we'd give away 10% of our gross income, so before any tax or deductions, to charity. And to facilitate that, we set up the Altor Foundation. So it's our own charitable foundation that runs alongside the business. As I say, giving away 10% of income when you haven't got any income is easy. And we knew psychologically, if we set it up from day one, then it's a little bit like boiling the frog. We were boiling ourselves, essentially. We knew that we'd be able to carry on doing that if that was what we were doing from the get-go. Whereas obviously much more difficult to introduce that at a later stage. So that was very important from our perspective. We set up as a partnership as well, so we were flexible and we made sure that we were completely independent. So the evolution of Towery Law, it had started out as an independent financial advisor when I first joined, and then it had brought a lot of what it did in-house. So ultimately, it was running investments itself in-house. We felt, starting again, that we didn't want to do that. We wanted to be able to have clients approach us and have a range of solutions that we could offer them, rather than just saying, well, this is, whatever your question is, the answer is one of our 5 in-house models, which is unfortunately the most common way of doing things in our industry now. So yeah, some quite big decisions on day one, which we've stuck with all of. And the nice thing about that is that tying all of that together then in 2020, so about 3 years into the firm, we went for our B-Corp status, because we thought actually that's a really good way of tying all of those aspects together and just really testing whether we were doing as well as we could be, I guess.
Mm-hmm. 3 really core pillars then, really, that have, carried your business moving forward. I think there'll be lots of individuals out there that have had really long, successful careers, in established businesses. And I'm sure there are lots of our audience that themselves would like to create their own thing at one moment in time. When you sat down with your wife and you got out that pen and paper and you thought, okay, what are the key points for Outlaw Wealth moving forward? Was it like a collaboration of your personal ethos and your professional ethos? Like, how did you come down to those 3? Were there other things that you were potentially thinking about pushing at that moment in time as well?
Yes, that's a really good question. So it's definitely a combination of personal ethos and what we felt clients would want. So the idea of flat fees came from clients. Clients were starting to push back a bit against percentage charging, because they were saying, why am I paying a percentage, and trying to get, particularly the bigger clients, trying to get you to discount the percentages. So it was a couple of our clients who'd given us the idea when I was working in Towery Law, or Tilney as it was towards the end. And so that was definitely client driven. So the independence was client driven, the fee charging was client driven, and then the foundation was very much us. That was very much our take. There wasn't a client that was suggesting we give away that amount of our revenue. And we just thought tying those 3 together is important when you're setting up your own business. It's important that you've got a reason for getting up and going to work in the morning, right? So you've got to believe in what you're delivering to clients. That's super important. But you've also got to have something else, I think, anyway, another reason for doing what we're doing. And so that very nicely gave us both of those. It felt like a good balance when we first set up.
Yeah, fab. And also, like, the subscription model is more common nowadays. We do see it more, but still it's very much in its rarity. I know we've had further conversations in the past where there's sort of, you can connect with other businesses that that set up in the industry, and they are still more few and far between. And especially giving 10% of your gross income to charity is a massive thing. And I don't know any other business within the profession that does that I've sort of had communication with. How did it feel like when you were starting your own business, going against the grain a little bit? Because I think it's easy when you're starting something starting something yourself, which is a big challenge, to sort of, I guess, play it a little bit safe. So how did it feel to take your ethos but go against what general patterns within the financial planning profession?
Yeah, so it wasn't straightforward, because initially when we made those decisions, we thought, well, actually, there probably are others that are doing this, and we quickly realised actually there weren't very many at all. I have to say, our profession is great for people volunteering and giving up their time to speak to newbies who are trying to build something new. I was particularly fortunate to be given some time by Alan Smith at Capital Asset Management in London. He is sort of the godfather of flat fees. He's been doing it for a lot longer than we have. And he was very generous with his time, still is very generous with his time in, and I guess it's that validation, isn't it? It's that reassurance. I wouldn't have minded if we were absolutely the first firm to have done it, but I would have been much more nervous if there was only ourselves. And so that was incredibly generous of him and hugely supportive. And we've tried to do that now. We've been up and running for sort of 6-7 years now. We've tried to pay that forward and be available to other advisors who are setting up from scratch if they want to ask us about the proposition, how it works, and just the practicalities of how you go about charging. We're very happy to share that now because we had the benefit of Alan's wisdom in the day. So the nice thing is okay, maybe we're unique because of the combination of all of those three. So that's probably true, but you can always find a firm generally that is doing at least they're doing one of those, and you can go talk to them about their experience. So that was huge for us.
Yeah. And I think if there's people in the audience that are listening to this and have got their own ideas, I think you obviously alluded to that talking about Alan, but generally from your experience, have you found that other people within the profession are very happy to help and give advice where they can? If there's someone that's listening to this and thinks, I've got this idea that I really want to push forward, but they don't know how to implement that or how to bring that into fruition. Do you find that there is often people within the industry that are doing something similar that are very often happy to help?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best way to find those people is to and please don't everyone phone Alan Smith because he'll never ever again. But the best way probably is just to go to those obvious networks that are out there. If it's Next Gen, there's Octo members. There's lots of study groups, network groups. I'd like to think it's a profession we're one of the better ones at just being supportive of the wider community. And so there are some excellent places to go. And generally speaking, in one of those communities, so Next Gen is a very good example. If you're a member of the Next Gen community, you can ask a question. Someone will come back, typically 2 or 3 people will come back and say, yeah, I've done that. Drop me a message. I'll talk you through it. And so it's just about making those connections and finding your tribe, I guess, with the planning profession. And that will be different for different people. There'll be some people who want to set up firms very different to ours, but they will be able to find their tribe just by asking.
Yeah, I think we're big fans of the Next Gen community here, so it's always nice for them to get a little bit of a shout out. But I think obviously we got in contact by me posting on LinkedIn, wanting to reach out and speak to other B-Corp financial planning firms. So I think that in its essence just shows that there's always people within the community and within the profession that are happy to point you in the direction of other people that they think will be able to support you. But I think that's just a really nice golden nugget to shine a light on, because I think this industry is full of people that are very ambitious and very motivated and want to do something for themselves, but very often that element of fear of failure or not knowing where to start can hold people back. So I think from someone that has set up their own business and done it themselves, I think it's really good to point people in the direction of like, well, if you need a little bit of support, speak to others, because we are a very welcoming profession, which I think is one of the best things about it. We're naturally sort of in competition with each other, but also always happy to put an arm around each other and help where we can. I think going back to one of those pillars, the foundation, I think our audience will be really intrigued to know more about that and how it looks at Altor Wealth and sort of what that involves. So can you talk about that in a bit more detail for us?
Yeah, sure. So we set the foundation up entirely separately from the business. We have one external trustee just to keep us keeps on the straight and narrow with it. The foundation essentially is there to receive the first share of the income of the partnership. And it does essentially, it does 2 things. It's building up half of the income it receives. It's building up a longer term endowment so that once the main business has broken away at some point in the future, or if someone else takes over, doesn't want to carry that on, I can't advise forever, so I can't be running the business forever. So the idea is that it will have sufficient capital to sustain itself in perpetuity, really. So that's the idea of that half. And then the other half of the revenue comes in, goes straight out to grants given to UK registered charities to support various projects. So we support poverty alleviation globally, do a lot of environmental work as well, some work supporting mental health locally. So we have sort of a range of local, global, and then thematic things that we support. We tend to commit to supporting set charities so the same amount regularly, and then we'll make a commitment for a set amount of time, just so that they know they've got the stability of the income, and that they know what to expect. And that's been fantastic. And to be perfectly honest, that's become a big driver of the way we run the business, the reason for running the business, and gives us the energy, hopefully, to carry on running it, because it's a big motivator for us. We also do match give if our staff are raising for their own charities, as long as it's a cause that's within the boundaries of what we will look at as a foundation, then we'll match 1-for-1 if they're doing their own fundraising. So that's led to some really, really nice initiatives as well.
Yeah, because I was going to say, obviously, you at like founder level, it's obviously something that you've been really passionate about, and your personal ethos has made that you can incorporate that within the business. But is it something that the wider staff, wider employee body is really bought into as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. I hate to talk for them, but yeah, I like to think so. I think it does flow through what we do as a business. But we're not perfect as a business. We've got things wrong. We're founders, and we're first time founders. Sometimes people in the past within the business, forget that we're to a degree doing this by trial and error, and hopefully there's been less error on the client side, but internally we haven't always made the right decisions. But I like to think that it does underpin that ethos of the firm, not only the B-Corp status, but also the fact that there is that focus, there's that charitable focus, the fact that we will support staff to fundraise themselves, and support the causes that they care about as well. Hopefully is something that they find meaningful.
Yeah, because I was going to say, but for me personally, I think everyone has their own individual stories, their own causes that they are passionate about for different reasons. And if I was part of a business that I knew would match my charitable contributions, if I wanted to do something that would really encourage me to run that marathon, or I can't imagine myself ever running a marathon, but run that marathon, or climb that mountain, or do whatever it was, and like push to raise more money, knowing that my organization would be able to match that. And I think it works really nicely. And if you're passionate about, if you're passionate about supporting these causes, it gives the opportunity for other individuals within the business to support the causes that they're passionate about, also backed by the business. So I think it's a lovely story. In terms of Outlaw Wealth, I know you have the statistics on how much sort of money has been donated to the foundation today. I think if you don't mind
Yeah.
sharing, that'd be great.
Yeah, no. Of course, I mean, anyone who's listening to the podcast will be able to do the rough mental maths and reverse calculation. So we've gone past 500,000 in donations to the foundation since we started, which was 2017. So sort of 7 years ago. So yeah, it's about 500,000. Obviously, because the business has been on an income growth rate. It was much lower in the early years, whereas now it's reached a level where it's pretty stable and coming through at a good level. So things have certainly accelerated in terms of donations. But yeah, that's the sort of total so far. And I would hope over the life of the business, we can go on and donate, many multiples of that more to the foundation, to give the foundation a really solid basis to grow from.
500,000 is a lot of money. So I think that's, that money can make a massive impact. I think it can be difficult with these charitable projects to know exactly how your money has impacted certain causes. But do you have any stories from like the charities that you run really close with in terms of what your donations have funded?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so there's various things we've done over time. So we've planted seagrass off the Welsh coast. So a lot of people don't know, but seagrass actually sequesters carbon at a much faster rate than trees do on land. We've lost a lot of our seagrass globally just through dredging for fishing industry and also climate change and changing water temperature. So we've been supporting a project that is reseeding seagrass in a little place called Dale in Wales to try and just capture that carbon again. And that's something that once planted, obviously, as long as it doesn't get destroyed again, will, is a sort of an evergreen, I guess, in terms of carbon. We've supported a charity locally to here that provides mental health support to people who can't afford private counselling sessions and can't realistically wait for the NHS waiting lists currently. They do require a small donation because they want their clients to value the sessions, the mental health sessions, the counselling that they have. So they ask them to pay £5 for a counselling session. So our funding has essentially allowed them to pay for their rental costs because, of course, although they've got people who volunteer who are trained psychotherapists and counsellors, they've still got the premises costs because people come to them for sessions. So we've been able to support them to be able to afford to rent the offices that they've got or the treatment rooms they've got. So it was just a couple of examples. We'll respond to crises when they break out, globally as well. So it depends a little bit what happens in a year, but those are probably two of the ones that are more practical and closer to home.
There's some great examples and some really nice stories in terms of how your donations have made a real impact in today's world. And I think it definitely goes to show that financial planning firms can be a force for good. And generally in the wider picture, companies can be a force for good, which I think ties us really nicely to sort of the B Corp element of this. So you mentioned that, that sort of was something that came naturally and sort of underpinned things. So was there ever a moment when you really decided to go B Corp? Tell me a little bit about that initial journey for you.
Yeah, so when we first approached B Corp, not knowing very much about it, we thought, well, look, we're donating to charity. We're doing what we can in terms of our carbon footprint. We feel we're running the business in an ethical way. So it felt like a sort of an obvious next step. What we hadn't fully appreciated with B Corp is quite how rigorous the certification process is. So we started in late 2019, I think, on certification. Any company can go onto the B Corp website and plug their numbers or answer the questions to get an indicative score. And we did that and thought, well, that's a pretty good score. It's above sort of the minimum for B Corp qualification. So let's progress this. What was fantastic about that process is it isn't just a tick box exercise and then you pay your fee and you get the badge. What it does is it highlights where you could be doing better. So we were quite surprised. We found that because we don't control our premises, for instance, because we're in serviced offices, we found that actually our environmental footprint was higher than we expected once we've been through the process. So that's led to engagement with the landlord to try and get a few things improved with the building. We don't have full control over that. So that's still one of our lowest, because they put 5 pillars. It's one of the lowest scores that we've got. But we're doing what we can to improve that. And actually, I guess that has a multiplier effect because we're one of many businesses in the building. So actually, we've improved things for all of the businesses in the building just by being those advocates. It also highlighted that there were a couple of gaps in terms of our staff proposition, because people is a big part of the B Corp scoring. And it was really helpful actually to be asked the question, what's your policy on this? Do you offer this? And, for a couple of those questions, we had to say, well, no, actually, we haven't got a policy on that. And no, we don't offer that. So let's go away and discuss it, decide we're going to do it, implement it. ready for our first 3-year review, which is what we're going through at the moment. Um, so so it started out as a let's go and get the badge because we think we're brilliant. And it turned into a slightly humbling a more humbling process where actually we were shown all the ways in which we weren't doing as much as we could, and we were able to improve. We got a good score first time round. We've managed to improve the score through the first 3 years. But again, I mean, we're mid recertification at the moment, and they don't make it easy, which is great. In a way, you don't want it to be easy because then it's valueless, really. And we're still toing and froing with our assessor at the moment over a couple of last items, but we've had to prove everything again. Which is great, actually. And there are some firms that have been kicked out of being B-Corps because of takeovers or bad behavior. So, it's a genuine, it's not just a free badge. There's plenty of those you can get in financial services, to be honest. You can sponsor a table and win an award. But this feels like something that's genuine and hard to obtain.
Yeah, I can fully say how rigorous and in depth that process is. It's one of those things where no stone is left unturned. Every little bit of area of your business is sort of nitpicked and looked at under a microscope, which I think does, as you said, then make the B-Corp certification, when you do have it, something really to be proud of, because that you've gone through that really thorough, in-depth process. And I think now that we're B Corp certified, you pick up on all the other companies that are B Corp. I now buy B Corp granola, like little things like that, and I'll pay the extra
Absolutely.
50p to know that the company that I'm funding is a force for good. But I think obviously you said that you found it sort of surprising in the initial how vigorous the process was, and how it really did go into exploring all those avenues that maybe you hadn't thought about, like as you said, being in a serviced office and the impact that has on the environment. But were there any other parts of the initial process or going through that journey that sort of you did surprise you or you didn't expect?
Yeah, so I guess the other one, which we just hadn't thought about at all, was the pillar of community. So it's your local community and what you're doing in the local community. I mean, for us, we're all sort of coming into a central office from a range of places and a range of. So one person could walk to the office. There's one person who's got an hour's drive to get into the office, and so really we didn't have a local community as such, or not one that we were really involved with. So that was a really interesting one. It drove us to think about how we can get more involved locally, how we can get the whole team more involved locally, and that's another thing as well. I think when we started out, it was like the founders were going for B Corp, and through the process, we realised actually you can't do that. It's got to be everyone. Yes, there's going to be someone internally who's filling in, the questionnaire and go through the process, but you've got to have the whole team engaged with that. Otherwise, you're just going to miss out on several elements of the process. So that was probably the other one. I think maybe we were a bit naive when we first deployed, that it would be easy. But I'm pleased that it's proven not to be, actually, because it's improved what we do hugely. And like I go and have a look on the B Corp map and find B Corps that can do various things. We've just shipped off a load of electronic devices from the office securely to go to a local firm for secure recycling, and they're a B Corp, and found them via the B Corp map. There's subgroups with B Corps as well. So there's a B Corp financial services group that meets semi-regularly, and it's just interesting to hear what other people are doing, and discuss it. Get support from peers really who are interested in the same sort of things.
Yeah, I think going back to that point of, and I completely agree with you, it's very much often the decision makers or the directors and founders, because they have that influence, that go, okay, great, we're going to try for that. But also then you do need to get everyone engaged. So how did you have different people within the business that you sort of got involved with the B Corp? Did you just sort of keep them updated within the process? You know, the same as not both Recruit UK, Financial Planner Life, and yourselves not being extremely large businesses. It's not necessarily that difficult. But how did you get the whole staff body involved in this process?
Yeah, so it's been more of a case of keeping people updated as we go. I mean, like you guys, we're a small firm, so we're not in a position where we can take everyone out of the firm for a day and say, right, this is B Corp Day. We're going to work on all 5 of the pillars and do it all together. We don't have the capacity to do that. So it's more about keeping people updated through the process, and getting them to understand the bits that had changed, I guess, is the most important thing, particularly for the triennial review that we're just going through at the moment. So, it's about communicating that out and just letting them know, look, this is where we were, this is where we got to, and these are the improvements we've managed to make along the way. Obviously, any improvements in that sort of worker column, they will have felt the direct impact of that anyway. So they'll be fully on board with that. Yeah.
And how is the recertification? Because I think, we are B-Corp certified, and now that next step is to go through that process. So what are the similarities and the differences? I think generally we're very keen to get as much insight and hints and tips as possible, really.
Yeah, so B Corp haven't fundamentally restructured what they require, although they are looking at a more serious review of the standards at the moment. But for our recertification, it was a lot of the same areas, but this time the big change was that they had some subject experts that they brought in, particularly in financial services for us. You could tell they had a whole new question set around ethical investing, whether we offered it as an option to clients, whether we offered social impact investing, and it really dug down into the percentages of clients who were, ESG screened or impact investing. Now we don't insist on a client being ethical or non-ethical. That's the client's preferences. They need to make those preferences, not us. We don't force that on them. But it was an interesting process to go through. There's a whole nother level of data around how we approach that area and how many of our clients are adopting that as an approach. So they're definitely starting to get expertise in-house, which is industry relevant or profession relevant, which again is a good thing, I think.
And then in terms of, like moving forwards, obviously you've now got sort of, the B Corp certification, you've got everything that you do with the foundation, like a really strong set of personal ethos that sort of underpin what you're doing. Do you find that, people approach you as a business due to this?
Yes, they do. I mean, I don't want to present it as this big new business opportunity. It isn't. We did B Corp for ourselves. We have had clients approach us because of B Corp status. Absolutely, they tend to be people who are very motivated to be. They would say they're coming at it from a particular point of view. So they're either ethical investors or they've got a particular ethical specialism that they're looking for, or they're social impact investors. And they will tend to, that'll be their first screen of advice companies. Because there are quite a few really good advice companies now who are B Corps. So you've got quite a good range of options. So that type of client, which is quite niche, quite small, is applying that as an initial screen and then, going to all of those firms within the B Corp certification to decide which one fits them. So yes, we have had clients come to us. I think actually it probably has more of an impact on recruitment than it does on
Oh, really?
clients. Yeah, I think it doesn't necessarily drive new applicants to us, but we do tend to find, so we are part of the Reading University internship program. So we have interns come and join us every year. And we do have staff join us from time to time. And when you're interviewing several candidates, you will often see more energy from the ones that have gone and looked at the website, found something that really resonates with them from a culture or a charity point of view, and they'll bring that to the interview. And so very often, I mean, we will often recruit based on cultural fit rather than technical knowledge. Technical knowledge can be gained and trained. Cultural fit, you can't train that into someone. They've either got it or they haven't. And so one of the first questions we ask is, was there anything on our website that resonated with you? Some candidates will say no. We never a great start to an interview. Some will say, oh yeah, I was looking at the B Corp and actually it's prompted me to look into B Corps. I'm really interested in that and talk about that. Some will say the charity, some will say, ethical investing, whatever it is. They'll pull something out which is of relevance. So I think it's probably had more of an impact there maybe than new business.
That's really interesting. So I was going to say that's a bit of a double-edged question, because I know I've asked you that before, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's brought in, new clients specifically due to that. Though we've had conversations about how, people have come to you guys as a business because they resonate with some of the things that they've seen online. But that's really interesting from a recruitment perspective. I think just going back to that, any candidate that's going in there and says that they haven't seen anything that resonates with them on their website has not been dealing with a consultant at Recruit UK, because
that's the standard. That's part of the standard training, is it?
Made sure that they definitely did their research and found things that resonated with them. But I think that's really interesting, because especially if you're hiring from a perspective very often of cultural fit, and you feel like people that buy into your business, I guess you feel like projecting your ethos and being really strong about what you stand for and what you align with means that the individuals that you're getting in the business moving forward also align with that message, which generally means then as your business keeps on moving forward, you said yourself, you're not going to be able to advise forever, but if you can get people that are bought into the business, while you're there, that buy into that message from what you're projecting out there, it means that, I guess, in the long term, you hope those values will be continued moving forward, even if you're not within the business at that moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We think that fit is crucial. We are we're very open and we're very clear and hopefully not preachy, but bordering on that. On our website, we're very clear about the way we fundamentally believe things should be done. I hope we're not critical about alternatives, and we wouldn't ever be. There's many different ways of setting up a business, running a business, and advising. And we're not particularly negative about a different way of doing it. We just believe in the way that we do it. And I think that comes across through the website. I think it comes across through the blog, through LinkedIn. And so I would hate to think that any candidate would end up talking to us who didn't have a sense of who we were. And maybe that screens some people out. I don't know. People are motivated by different things.
Yeah, and if it ultimately, I think if you're projecting a message via your website or your media channels or whatever sort of you use as a business, if it doesn't resonate with people and it does screen people out, they're obviously not the right fit for you guys. So it almost does some of the hard work for you before someone set the foot in the door. I think going back to that B Corp process and being certified, you are obviously a business that has got really strong ethos and values. Do you think if individuals in the wider scale of things do want to be a purpose for good, that B Corp process is just such a great thing to do? Because as we said, it shines a light on the things that you're good at, the things that you're bad at, but just generally in terms of the theme of this B Corp month, allows you to push forwards.
Yeah, so I'd encourage, I mean, to be honest, I'd encourage any business. I think it's just good business practice to go and look at the B Corp assessment, answer the questions and just get an indicative score, because you don't have to be giving 10% of your income to charity to be a B Corp. That's not B Corp requirement. Far from it. And in fact, it doesn't really gain us any more of a score in that element of the B Corp assessment than other firms who are doing much less. And we are stronger maybe in one area, weaker, as we've already talked about, weaker in others. So we're by far away from being the perfect B Corp company. But other companies will be stronger in those other areas. So I wouldn't want it to come across that you have to be donating to charity. That's not what B Corp's about. B Corp's about people, planet. It's about community. And it's about the ethical side as well. So if you are passionate about your team and your people as an employer, then actually that's your strong pillar that you go into the assessment based on. Maybe it will help you on some of those other elements. So maybe you'll be high scoring on workers, and it might encourage you to do a bit of work around environment, and some of the other aspects, community. Equally, if you're a firm who's really working heavily in the local community, and that's a big part of what you're doing, great. That's your actual pillar that's going to be your strong pillar for B Corp. I just think it's a great sanity check. Whether you take it forward and get the official, sort of wooden plaque or not, is relevant, but it's not the only thing that's important about the assessment. I think it's just a great assessment of where you're at as a business.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. A great assessment of where you're at. And as we said previously, it doesn't leave any stone unturned. So no business, no person is perfect. But B Corp, if you want to be a business which is moving forward and doing the best for the people, the planet, the community, all of those pillars, going through that B Corp process allows you to shine a light on what you're great at, but also what you're not so great at, and move that forwards as well. I think we've had multiple discussions about how the B Corp is something that can really progress businesses and progress financial planning firms. But we've already also spoken about one of the things that has held financial planning firms back is technology, and their relationships with that. So do you mind elaborating on that in a bit more detail for us?
Yeah, so technology is a bit of a bugbear. I mean, it is for most people, and most financial advisors I talk to are just despairing with the state of technology in financial services. I say financial services. Actually, it's the IFA world, the financial planning world, where it's weakest, probably. I guess I know I've said this to you before. The frustration for me is if I pick up my phone, I can do pretty much anything in my life very smoothly, very easily. I can be sat here in the office. I can switch the heating on at home via a nice little app on the phone. I can see what the car's doing, check whether it's been nicked. There's so much that's been built in the world that can now be done very simply, very easily from one device. And yet, when it comes to financial advice and engaging with a financial advisor, it's still not brilliant. It's not at that level. And I think maybe that's partly because people who are building tech are dealing with, we're still quite a cottage industry. So the majority of advisors by number are still in sort of 2-person or smaller firms. So that does make it quite hard for software firms to break through. And, there's a couple of big players, but beyond that, you're dealing with lots and lots of little companies, micro businesses, really. So maybe that's where that comes from. But it does feel like we're behind. And I think it's a real risk for financial planning firms, because if clients can do things quickly and slickly via DIY platforms, we all know the risks of doing DIY, and I would not suggest to anyone they do it. But the slicker those things get, the more we lag behind, the more risk is posed to our existing clients going off and going down that route, or just not attracting a new generation of clients. I think it's a big issue for attracting clients who are in their 20s, frankly, in their 30s as well. Although having said that, we've got some clients who are retired in their 70s and 80s who think tech is pretty boring in financial services. So we are poorly served at the moment. There's some big incumbent technology firms who shall remain nameless, who are getting away with really old-fashioned technology, really, really old-fashioned software that's horrible to interact with, both from the advisor end and the client end. And they're getting away with it because they've captured market share, and they're being lazy with that. I am slightly encouraged, if I'm having a positive day, I'm slightly encouraged there's some people coming through who are building some good technology. Timeline are building some really exciting technology at the moment. It's not quite there at the moment, but it looks like it could be a real breakthrough technology, I think, for financial advisors. Lots coming down the pipe from those guys. There's some stuff being built in the CRM space as well, which looks more exciting than the existing incumbents. But I just think we've got to have a client experience that is as good as every other sector in a client's life. We can't be relying on, if they want to know something, they'll pick up the phone. I think those days are gone. Those were the days I was operating in odd years ago when I was first advising. People would pick up the phone to you if they wanted to know something. Um, I think the minimum requirements of most clients have risen substantially since then.
I think in terms of like the user experience, like I fully appreciate that on sort of like the recruitment and that end side of things as well. I always mentioned this to you previously. Again, shall name nameless, but some of the automated systems we upload to sort of interact with clients are really bad to interact with, and that then means that we're having that negative experience, but also if the potential candidate needs to interact with that as well, they're having a bad experience, which almost sets them up for a bad precedence about that business without even having met with them. So it really negatively impacts things on both sides. It makes your job harder, and it can really affect that in terms of the clients. And I fully appreciate what you're saying, especially in terms of if that is out there in a more accessible way for individuals, that can stop them from being attracted by using financial planning in the first place. I saw on Instagram actually last night targeted advertisements, obviously knowing something about what I'm doing, talking about online trading, and it was saying, don't use these guys, so many people are on here not knowing what they're talking about, use us. And I was thinking, God, you just pick up the phone and speak to an advisor if you're really that interested in investing. But if it's that accessible for other people to start dealing with those kind of things themselves and using new technology, you don't want it to detract from the value that financial planning and financial advisors can add. And yeah, as you said, positively, there are people that are doing great things within the space. But building on that, I think this will be very interesting for our audience. You obviously were a bit disillusioned with technology. So what did you decide to do then, Matt?
Yeah, so yeah, good question. Brings back painful memories. So we decided that we couldn't find anything that would fit us. This was a few years ago now. So we decided actually we would get a firm. Well, we're not software developers, so we went and found a firm that would build a client portal for us from scratch. So bespoke build for our clients, because we just wanted. It's sort of like the swan along the surface, isn't it? From the client's point of view, as long as everything looks clear, smooth, and is beautiful from the client's point of view, great. If we have to do the sort of the swan's legs under the water and we're running around trying to fix things, actually, that's fine. I don't mind that. Ideally, longer term, tech will help us with that bit as well. But the primary thing is a client ought to be able to log in, see everything they need to see, message us securely. So we had a firm build that for us. The first firm we employed, unfortunately, the end result was pretty, but it wasn't secure. We did some security testing with it. It just wasn't good enough for our clients and the security of their personal data. So we parted ways with them. That was quite an expensive process, hence the bad memories. We went to a second firm who were really good, built us something really quickly, much less expensive, and that's the solution that clients are using today. We haven't been able to push through the upgrades to that system that we were looking to do. So I think the thing about software is it's a massively fast moving sector. So, if you can't upgrade what you've got, then at some point you're going to have to pivot and put something else in place. And I think that's where we are probably by the end of this year. Is we might need to implement something different because the market's just moved on in terms of what's available. So yeah, it's a hard lesson to learn. If I have I've got many flaws, but if I have a major flaw, it's getting attracted by sort of shiny new things. And sometimes, fortunately, I've got partners in the business who don't let me do every good idea or run with every good idea I have, which is just as well. But sometimes I will spend a lot of time and effort running down a cul-de-sac. Generally speaking, I'm just burning up my own time with that. We've implemented a few things internally that have come as a result of that, but I've been down more cul-de-sacs than I have come up with good ideas, which we've ended up implementing. So I do have one of those brains, unfortunately, that does sort of get attracted by fireflies. And you need that balance in business. You need someone who's just a bit more practical and a bit more balance sheet driven, who says, okay, that sounds exciting. We're not doing it. I do. I'm unfortunate. I do have that in the business. So
Good. I was going to say Sam, our director, is such an innovator, and I feel like he'd definitely resonate with you on that side of things. He's such an ideas man. Every time we speak to him, he's got a new idea, and they're all great. But it's all about knowing which ones are actually worthwhile pursuing,
yeah,
and which ones are worthwhile. Just sort of, we can get back to that
yeah,
another
we'll
day.
get to that. Yeah,
It
yeah,
still seems like a great idea in a week's time. But
yeah.
do you feel like it's then just having that? And I think lots of people in our audience will resonate with that. I think naturally a big hurdle is that if you are someone that is progressive and wants to keep moving forward, there is always like a new shiny thing that you can run towards. Do you find like it's just the balance of bringing in the right people in the business, or how do you navigate that hurdle?
Yeah, so we've been through a process of quite regular change. I wouldn't say constant change, but quite regular change as things. And I'm not talking here about the core philosophy of flat fees, evidence-based portfolios, cash flow planning. That hasn't changed, but there's lots of things you can do, sort of the satellite things around the business that you can do. And if we think there's a way in which we can improve the client experience, then we'll do that. So it's all very client focused with us because our clients pay us the same amount every year, so it's flat fee. It's a really good discipline because it means that every year we've got to tell them why we're worth that amount for the following year. So we're constantly trying to improve and expand the proposition that we're offering to them to help them in more and more aspects of their finances. And really that's then about, well, what can we do without breaking the systems and without breaking the staff, I guess. So the pace of change has to run at the collective capabilities of the team. Because having a founder who's running around like headless chicken pursuing 10 different things, it is not good. It's not healthy, actually. If then you're trying to get the team to change 10 different things that they're doing, because they've got a day job to do well as well. So it is about finding a balance. It's about prioritization, really. And if a founder wants to go and burn his or her own time looking at new things, great. And they can do that, and that's on them. Implementation, they have to take some responsibility for the impact of that within the business. So that's where you get down to needing other people, other decision makers in the business to balance you out a bit.
And Matt, you come across as someone that you've got those core values, those very core foundations of what Outlaw Wealth is. Obviously, these other bits can fluid, and the only thing permanent is change. So everything is constantly sort of evolving. But I guess just to round us up for today's episode, in terms of it, like the short, medium term. Definitely aligning with B Corp months and being, a purpose for good and pushing things forward. What's something that you would like to see develop or change within Outdoor Wealth? What impact would you have liked to have had in sort of this short, medium term?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think for us, we are not pursuing growth for growth's sake. That's not what we're about as a business. We currently have 4 advisors. We're in the process of recruiting a 5th. We have our advisors looking after a relatively small number of clients compared with the industry average. Because we want to keep service levels high, we want our advisors to be contactable, available to clients, and constantly coming up with value add ideas for clients. If we have a motivation in terms of expansion, it's really just as we grow top line revenue, we grow the foundation. So that's important to us, but not at the expense of burning staff out who've got to do the implementation, got to do the day job. So at the moment, our thoughts are all around how do we grow in a sustainable way that's fair to the staff we've got, and allows us to just, I wouldn't say slowly necessarily, but allows us to gently maybe grow or sustainably grow revenue and grow the foundation. So that's what we're working on currently. What that looks like, I don't know. We work very closely with the FTSE 100 company. We're on their employee benefits. So we're one of the elections they can make on their employee benefits. system to get cash flow planning from us. That's had a big jump in uptake this year. So that's been an interesting process, and we're just trying to navigate whether that means that we will grow at a slightly faster rate than we were planning for this year. So we'll see how that works its way through.
Any particular personal, professional goals that you're really keen to hit?
Or personal goals, yeah. Well, I've got some. We went away on safari to Zimbabwe for Christmas.
Wow.
Thank you. It was lovely and lovely to do as a family. I do have some Zimbabwean weight to shift though, so I need my personal goal. I've been waiting for all the people to join the gym in January and then quit by February the 1st. So I've told myself February I'll be rejoining the gym to shift some of that 5-6 meals a day on safari problem that I caused myself. So that's the personal goal. Professional goals, I think, if we can grow the team of people who are directly looking after the clients in a way that means they're all feeling like they're still getting the input and the development, then I'll be happy. I think the worst possible thing you can do is recruit and then not develop. So if you end up with people who are feeling underdeveloped, that's not a good place to be in. And that means you've got to just be careful about bandwidth. So that's our professional ambition.
Wow, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Matt, for sort of spending time to speak with me today. And I'm sure there's lots of helpful hints and tips within this episode for our audience. And it's great to go into depth with another B Corp firm about that process and why it's important to yourself. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. It was lovely to speak to you. Thank you.